All right, good evening. Welcome to 2024. Can you believe it's a new year already? How many of you still are working on keeping those resolutions? Yeah? Or have you let them go already? If you've let them go, that's okay. We can get back on track any day now. And I'm really excited about this particular one because it's all about goal mapping and planning ahead for the future. So I think this was perfect timing to do this one at the beginning of the year because everybody's already thinking about these things. So welcome. ARC of Alabama is happy to host, and Alabama Care is here for all of the tech support that we need. Everything's getting recorded and will be posted to the Alabama Care Facebook page. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the series, we will take all four and post to the ARC of Alabama website. So tell your friends to join us and go back and watch if they've missed some. Collectively, you'll see the overarching theme is all about self-determination. And if you were with us on the last webinar, you'll remember that when we looked back through time in the history of mindsets and perspectives throughout time, that we have entered into what professionals are now as the era of self-determination. And so I think that's great. We've come so far. We've come such a long way. And so we really want to get this right. And so part of our advocacy here with what we are doing with ARC of Alabama is actually trying to help families come together and learn more about how to help their loved ones develop more self-determination. And I knew from experience that one of the best things, one of the best tools, one of the best ways to do that was by utilizing these life course tools. And so that's information that I know is incredibly valuable when you're thinking about planning and reaching goals and becoming more independent, becoming more self-determined. I have been trained to use these life course tools. I went through the certification series and earned all my badges and got to the point where I can be considered an ambassador for the life course tools. If you haven't done that yet, I strongly encourage you to, because they take a deep dive into everything. I'm just going to cover the basics tonight to kind of pique everybody's interest and explain what it's all about. But if you really, really, really want to dig more into it and become an ambassador and be certified and be able to do these kind of trainings, please look into doing that. It took altogether about 12 weeks. And then on the back end, it ended up being 6 months, but it wasn't hard. It was once a week meeting with people and getting trained and getting coached. There's just so much valuable information with these life course tools. And so I'm excited to get to share that with everybody. I want to go ahead and start out with the very website itself and show you how to engage there. But then we're going to dig into each individual tool, and then we'll wrap it up. And for everybody who is participating tonight, we have the guide to building natural supports that I'll be sending you. It's kind of like a workbook, but it's just a training guide or a bunch of helpful tips that you'll be getting via email if you were online and participating tonight. People that missed it tonight will have to ask for that guide after they've watched this recording, or else they're not going to know that they get it. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited, and I appreciate everybody joining us. Alex Bimes is here too, and he's going to join us later for the part where we dive into the role or the tool that is called reciprocal roles, and you'll understand what I'm talking about there in a minute. So let's get started. I'm going to go straight to the website, and am I sharing screen now? Mm-hmm. I'm going to share screen, and hopefully y'all will see what I see.
And then on the right, there should be a blue button that says, or on the screen.
Oh, I see it. There we go. Okay, can everybody see the life course tools front page?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, if you can't, you got to speak now or forever hold your peace, because this is the rest of the webinar. So, all right. Okay, this is the Life Course Nexus, and it's a community of practice, is what it is. And when you go to the very first page, when you scroll down, you're going to see they have the library of resources, training and education, and the Life Course tools. And I want to show y'all where you can see which states are participating. They have a little interactive map right here. Can y'all see the interactive map? When I first started learning about the Life Course tools, there were only 9 states that had adopted these tools to use throughout their service providers and their agencies. Now look how many. Now I think there's less than 9 that have not yet. So this has caught on like wildfire because it's that good. So you would scroll down to your state, click on your state, and see your ambassadors who have been trained for that. Many of you might recognize a lot of these names on your screen. What I was specializing in was the person-centered planning practices. So that's a lot of what you're going to hear about tonight. All right, now, the first thing you're going to want to do is go up to the Life Course Tools library at the top, and you'll scroll down to the framework. But I want you to make a note of everything else that's under this part, because that's what I'm talking about when I say you could go and get the training and do a deep dive. You've got the foundational tools, and inside those foundational tools, they've broken it down into these subtopics: family perspective, person-centered, and they even have the Spanish version. Exploring the life domains, that's a whole nother tool. They have abuse and awareness prevention, COVID-19 tips, daily life and employment, healthy living, respite, supported decision-making, and transitioning from foster care. So after you do that, you would want to look at exploring the life stages. And that's something I'm going to bring Alex in on in a little bit. And then they also have, whoops, where'd it go? They also have the integrated support star. And I'm going to explain that to y'all too. All right. Up here at the top, I need to admit, thank you. Up here at the top, next to the Life Course Library, you'll see Life Course Learning. Getting started with the Life Course tools, how to do the Ambassador Series and the training and the Badge Academy, and then organizational training beyond that. Then you've got your network of affiliates, and then you've got all of their upcoming events. They do a showcase every year in a different state, and they're doing another one this year. And I think they said, well, let's just look at it. I think they said Missouri, but I'm not sure. But every year they have a showcase of new ideas. Oh, Kansas City, Missouri, yeah. April 23rd through 25th. So put that on your calendars if you'd like to join and learn more and meet the think tank behind all of this. All right, so we're going to go to Life Course Framework, and we're going to dive into the foundational tools and watch this very short video. If I play this video, they can hear it too, right?
Yeah,
Watch this very short introduction. This is from Shelley Reynolds. She's the, I guess, founder of all of these tools. She's the one that got all this started. And so I wanted y'all to hear from her about the overview. Can they hear that?
so.
Can y'all hear that?
Life Course for Families now
There we can.
has become this, for some people, it's a way to articulate and organize their thoughts and be able to advocate and speak those to others. And maybe they hadn't been able to put it in words before. For other people, it becomes a structure for exploring because they don't know the unknown. They don't even know how to ask the questions. With our resource center that we've run here, I find that families don't know what to ask. And we have taught families to ask for services. And this gives a way for people to really articulate what they really want. So yeah, I might be calling and saying, you know, what services are available in my community. But deep down, what I'm really saying is, I want my daughter to have a friend. I don't know how to get them included into their sports team. I don't know how to do that. But families they don't know how to articulate that. So the life course becomes a way to offer questions, open-ended questions, open-ended templates and principles for you to gather your current value base and thought process, and hopefully expand that and really help you be able to articulate what you really want and need.
All right. So that's what these tools are all about. That's what they do. It helps you have conversations. It helps you have difficult conversations. It helps you share ideas, hopes, and fears. It helps you understand all of the available supports out there in your community or in your state. And it helps you understand how to access those supports. It's about problem solving and planning. It's about navigating the future and just basically exploring all of life's possibilities and making sure you stay on the right track with what you want your life to look like. You'll hear this phrase over and over when you dive into the life course tools, your vision of a good life. And what they mean by that, and I'll show you the tool in a minute, is the trajectory that you're on and the decisions you make on a daily basis will hopefully bring you toward your vision of a good life and not away from that vision. And so when you hear them talking about the good life, they're referring to that trajectory. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of those tools and the key principles on them. Can y'all see the little arrow on your screen?
Yeah.
You got that? Okay. I'm trying to point this arrow at this triangle. This is the all triangle, what they refer to as the all triangle. The whole triangle is 100% of the people out there who, regardless of age or ability or their family role or whatever policies or practices they use, they believe this is a core value of the life course tools. All families, all people have choices and access, should have choices and access to the supports that they need. That is not really important thing to remember here. That's not necessarily disability specific. So what I'm saying is, I have two children. I have Colby, my 24-year-old. He was born with cerebral palsy, and so he has a lifelong disability. But I also have Camden, my 18-year-old. He does not have a disability. And so he's what they would consider neurotypical. I can utilize, and I have used these tools in very different ways, but for the same reasons for both Colby and Camden. So I would encourage you, before you use these tools to practice with goal planning or future goal mapping or future planning with your loved one who has a disability, use them first on yourself, because that's going to help you understand not only their value, but how to go forward using them with someone else. So all means all. Liz Weintraub has got a whole blog on that, and she basically wants to help encourage inclusion, right? So all means all. That triangle represents 100% of the people out there who need supports and want to access those supports. So let's look at how they break this down. All people, regardless of age, ability, or family role, are considered in our vision, values, policies, and practices for supporting individuals and families. All families have choices and should have access to the supports they need, right? So you embrace the all on that. And what they have come to learn is that there's something called the Universal Strategy for Transformational Change. We're talking about systems change here, okay? This little green circle at the top of the triangle, those are people who are actually receiving the supports they are eligible for if they have a disability, and that represents about 25% of the whole. So that's a fraction of the whole. That means that 75% of people who have a disability and need to access supports are not getting those supports or services through those eligibility specific supports like a service provider. All right, so what that means is they're getting those supports elsewhere or they're not getting them. But the only other elsewhere there could be are public and private partnerships or community and society. All right, so we're going to focus on that kind of natural support system alongside those eligibility specific supports when you're thinking about your vision for a good life. All right, now we're going to go back. Where did the little, is this arrow like mine?
Mhm.
We're going to go back, fingers crossed. It's thinking, there we go. And we're going to recognize the person within the context of the family. And this is something I wanted to bring Alex in on because I think he's got a really good handle on recognizing the person within the context of the family. So this says, people exist and have reciprocal roles within a family system defined by that individual. So the roles adjust as the individual members of the family system change in age. The entire family, individually and as a whole, needs support to ensure they are all able to successfully live their own good life. So we're talking about supporting the entire family here. We're not just talking about supporting that person within the context of the family themselves, but there are different ages and stages in their life that it's going to require support in different ways, probably from different people. All right, so we're going to click on the little learn more button here, go in and try to get a handle on it. And I'm going to invite Alec. Do you need to, you want to sit by
Yeah, that's fine.
over here? So recognizing person in the context of their family. So when you're talking about this, family is defined by that person. So you can be defined biologically with your biological family, socially, the social connections and networks that we have and the impact they have, environmentally, house rules and expectations, culture, all of these different things play into defining a family. And so supporting individuals and families across the life stages matters because who cares for that person? Who cares about that person? Those are two very different things. There's a big difference between caring for someone and caring about someone. So when you think about that, who does that person who has a disability in the family care for and care about? Because each one of us have people in our lives that make a big difference. It's family members, friends, or people that are like our family, right? And as families grow in age, those reciprocal roles often adapt and change. And I think it becomes really important when you're planning for the future to think about that person in the context of their family, whatever that family looks like, and ask yourself those questions. Who is going to care for my adult child when I pass? Who is going to care about my adult child when I pass? And who is my adult child going to care for? Who is my adult child going to care about? Because when you can start to think about those things and name those people or envision that life stage and how it's going to change, then you're much more adequately prepared to set your child up for success in the future. That's different. That looks different for everybody. And so it becomes really important to think about, where are we going to live? What's that environment going to look like? How are they going to get the natural supports they need? Who's going to be in charge of helping that person plan those things? So I wanted Alex to come in and share with you because I think he's got a really unique perspective on those reciprocal roles and how the family changed and through time and adapted to the support needs. And so I'm going to introduce Alex and let him.
We'll go ahead and stop sharing here. And then I'm going to ask if you will just kind of prod me on some questions.
Okay, so
Good to see everybody.
this is Alex. Alex actually founded and operates Alabama Care. And so he is the guardian of his aunt.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about your aunt or Bridget.
Yeah, so I have a family member. Her name is Bridget. She's my aunt. She lives here in Alabama in McCalla. And kind of the reason that I live here in Alabama is to make sure that she's taken care of long term in the case that her parents, her guardians from before, were to become sick or ill or pass away. And my grandfather, her father, passed away about 6 years ago, and I took on guardianship role for her for the past 6 years.
So did your grandfather already know that you were going to come in as her guardian before he passed and ask you, or was that something that developed later through your grandmother? How did that play out?
Yeah, it's really, I don't think there are two similar stories in any family, but there was a family plan for a number of years, for 20 years, of this is what's going to happen after my grandfather passes. And that's not the plan that's in action right now.
Okay.
So the original plan had been discussed with family members, and it's really tough. And, each person in that family is different, wants things at different points of their life as well. So maybe someone was a little bit more active in that family member's life, and they hit a point where they wanted to do other things, and this just wasn't suitable for them. And you have to respect that. Things change all the time, and you got to kind of roll with those. And that's where my grandparents, with the help of the family, started talking to more extended family rather than just their children. And it went to grandkids, those types of things. You just have to be supportive. And my grandparents always were in, is this something you'd be open to? We don't want to force anybody. We would love for you to help out in some capacity type of thing. And I was just the one that was kind of willing and able at that point to help out.
So you came in upon request as Bridget's guardian, and they decided, okay, Alex is going to be Bridget's guardian. How old was Bridget when you came in as her guardian?
53.
53.
53. Yeah.
So how old is she now?
She's 59 now.
So you've been her guardian for
6 years.
6 years. Okay.
And that is not a fun thing to do, is to change guardianships. It takes forever. Now, guardianship can have some negative connotation behind the word. I think that's up to each family, each individual. But when you're dealing with Social Security and Medicaid and stuff like that, rep payee stuff, plan for 6 months. That Social Security might not come through.
I think 6 months is good, actually.
I had to go down to Social Security office probably twice a month for 6 months. I just keep hammering it. Here's the paperwork again. Here's another copy. But keep in mind, for those 6 months, she didn't receive any of her Social Security.
Right.
So the rent, those types of stuff.
I've heard stories that can take longer than 6 months. So
Yeah, it was not fun.
But you got through it, and you've been supporting Bridget ever since as her guardian. What does that look like for Bridget on a daily basis? I can't imagine you're there in the house supporting her literally and physically 24/7. So what does that look like?
Yeah, and that was part of the question that I had coming in is, I was doing other work in Arizona at the time. And it was, well, what does that role look like for me? Because I'm not a natural caregiver, I don't think. And that's, you can care for someone, but it takes a certain, angels. I think they're angels that are great caregivers. And so I wanted to be clear about that. And my role in supporting my aunt to live her best life has become more of a manager of managing her team.
So you're kind of managing her care.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. So you mentioned a team, so it's obviously more than one person involved. So how do you find these people to come in to provide the actual hands-on, face-to-face support on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's the toughest part, I think, of kind of managing her care, is finding great team members. And I think in any endeavor that you do, if you got a good idea, great idea, it's probably going to work out if you got a good team together. So finding good team members is really difficult. I just hired, so she had a team member, a caregiver with her, my Aunt Bridget, with 20 years. And she was a great family friend.
That's very unique.
Yeah, I think in the caregiving industry, you don't see that very often. But yeah, so 20 years. She just retired in December. I also had another caregiver. Bridget has a team of 3 caregivers that left. So I had 2 caregivers that left. I got 1 caregiver that, still there. I had to hire 2 caregivers in the last 2 months. And that has been kind of crazy. I mean, I've gone through, probably 60 interviews. I took 5 people all the way through training, max certification, training on how to take care of Bridget, what her schedule is, what she likes, those kinds of things. She goes to Lakeshore on Fridays. This is what, I'm coming with you. We're going to Lakeshore. And we found 2 out of that, but that took 2 months. And that at that point was, almost, it was a full-time job trying to get through that process. And that's the hardest part of managing care, I think.
Is when you're popping in and out because people are not sticking around and you're having to do both, manage the care and provide the care.
Yeah, provide the care if nobody's able to cover the shifts, but also, I say it's hard for me in management of the care, but it's the most hard for Bridget because Bridget, she likes being around people that she trusts and she needs kind of total care. So she needs help getting out of bed, those types of things. And if she doesn't feel safe and secure with somebody getting her out of bed, she's not sure who this is and very vulnerable in some of these positions, then that causes stress on her. So I say, that's kind of the toughest part of managing care, but it's also the toughest part for Bridget. Because in the first few weeks that we hire a new team member, they're still learning, and Bridget will kind of test them as well. Can I get what does this look like? Are you going to be there for me when I need it? Whether that looks like, she'll normally sleep through the night. That looks like getting up in the middle of the night just to make sure that caregiver will come and check on her. And she's not verbal, but she tells me how well that's going in other ways. Yeah. So yeah, that's the hardest part is managing care, but that's the hardest part for my aunt Bridget.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you think that your role has changed for Bridget now versus the parental role she had going on before you got there? Do you think that much has changed for Bridget in that process?
Tell me, rephrase that a little bit if you could.
Okay, so before you came in onto the scene 6+ years ago, it was your grandparents, right, providing the majority of her care.
No, so she has had a caregiving team. So the last time that my grandparents provided like care to her one-on-one full-time, I think she was 14 or 15.
Oh, okay. All right. So now I'm understanding. So let me back up.
Where she was like living in the house with the family, everything. I think it was 14 or 15.
Okay. So Bridget's support network changed at that age because she went from living in the house to going to.
She was going to kind of different institutions where my family was living.
Okay.
That was in Illinois. Some of it was in Virginia.
Okay.
And then here in Alabama.
So when she came out of that institutional setting and back into a home, what was the biggest change or adjustment for both Bridget and the family from your perspective?
I think the biggest adjustment for Bridget was it was something new. And from what I understand, and I was in high school and I was up in Pennsylvania, so I didn't really see that on a day-to-day basis. But from my understanding and talking to my grandparents, she wasn't comfortable in her house where she was living for probably 6 months to 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it took a lot of time for her because you got to think she'd been in an institution in Partlow for 20 years.
Right.
And that's what she knew. And so in any type of process there, I mean, they had to ease her in. They originally would bring her to this new location just for like the weekend. And then she would go back to Partlow for a little bit.
So it was
easing.
transformational. It wasn't sudden.
Yeah. I mean, and anybody doesn't want a sudden, you hear you're living, the routine, all of a sudden we're going to move you here and it's a totally unfamiliar environment.
Okay.
And then from the other perspective, from the family perspective, it went from me and my grandparents visiting with Bridget on the holidays when I was in town. This is my experience. To my grandparents at that point having to take on a lot more time and investment in their daughter's care.
Right,
by managing, hiring that team, that kind of stuff.
right.
And I think that, you can see a little bit of that between, if someone is in residential services, as opposed to if they're living in their own, environment or with the family.
Mhm.
Just a little bit more investment, which is personal choices for individuals.
Absolutely. So going forward, what do you see changing for Bridget within the next 10 years, maybe 15?
Well, I hope, not much. She's got a great life. I can't think of a better, place for her to be with the people that care about her. Um, I think there's going to be I know there's going to be a little bit of downhill in her ability to get around. So
Physically, yeah.
physically, yeah.
Mhm.
So we as a family are going to have to kind of fix up her house a little bit differently, maybe some more rails, stuff like that to help her get around.
So mobility and access issues are gonna be
Yeah,
prioritized.
yeah.
Okay,
I hope that's the only thing that changes for her.
okay.
I want her to keep going to Lakeshore every week. I want her to keep going to the Hoover Library every week. I want her to keep going to birthday parties, all this kind of stuff.
Sounds like you've got a good action plan in place.
But, it's talking about that. I have an action plan for if I go home tonight and get in a car accident, what happens for Bridget? So I have that planned out and we've talked about that as a family. So then the next person that's agreed to be her guardian is my cousin.
Mhm.
So we have an actionable plan there as a family of what does that look like? Where does she live now? Well, my cousin doesn't live around here. Is it appropriate for somebody that lives in Mobile to be the guardian of somebody that maybe they don't see but a couple times a year?
Right.
Or does the family and does Bridget think that maybe she'd like someone to be a little bit closer that's her guardian so she can communicate with them a little bit more?
And so you've already had those, what I would call difficult conversations with those people for planning ahead.
Yeah, so we've gone through the process of, who becomes guardian, where would she live? We've made contact with those services and people down there in Mobile. And yeah, I think it's important.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
I do want to put a little plug. I'll put it in the chat. So if anyone would like to hear the story of my Aunt Bridget, I did a broadcast, or no, it was a podcast. It was the very first podcast I ever did before Alabama Care.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And I'll put it in the chat. You guys, it's about 40 minutes long if you want to listen to it, no video. I'm gonna let Mrs. Spangler take back over.
If you do that, y'all are gonna have to pull out the tissues. It'll make you cry. It's really good. All right, so I knew Alex had a good experience with sharing how the family role changed through the years and how they planned for it going forward. So I wanted him to share that with you. And that's just one example. It's obviously going to be a little bit different for every family, but I wanted you to kind of get a idea of all that was involved. So thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to go back to sharing screen. I hope.
Check to make sure that little blue button on the right clicks.
I don't see a blue button. How do I go back to the, oh, there it is. Okay. Got it. All right, y'all tell me if you can see. Can y'all see where we are?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is an idea of mapping relationships and reciprocal roles. You're going to literally take pen to paper or do it on your computer. They've got the digital version too, but you're going to write down names, write down ages and stages, life ages and life stages, and you're going to talk about the difference between who it is that's caring about and caring for your loved one with a disability. So to kind of give you an idea of that, caring about is considered sharing love, affection, and trust, spending time creating memories, knowing about their personal interests, their traditions that are important to them, and their culture. That's something that people who care about someone would know and do, all right? And then you have got the caring for. That's supporting their day-to-day needs, ensuring that their material and financial needs are met, connecting to meaningful relationships around them, and then making sure that they have advocates and supports for their daily life decisions. That is something that you would do when you care for someone. So that can be two different people or one and the same. But I think having listened to Alex's story, you see the overlap there. And so actually taking pen to paper, when you see these little charts down at the bottom, you're going to map out the differences in those reciprocal roles and who's involved in your loved one's life and who they are and what they do, so that you can see who cares for and who cares about and the roles that they will play both now and in the future. Okay, so those are the tools for caring with the person in the context of the family, which is huge. It's a huge concept, and I'll show you why here in a minute. We're going to go back up to the menu bar and scroll back down to trajectory of life experiences across the lifespan. So once you have focused on all people, you understand where their supports are coming from and who those people are, you've recognized the person within the context of the family, you are going to use this tool, which is called the trajectory, or the life experiences across the lifespan. So the trajectory is important because individuals and families can focus on a specific life stage with an awareness of how prior, current, and future life stages will impact and influence their trajectory, their life's trajectory. It's important to have a vision for a good quality life and have opportunities, experiences, and support to move that life trajectory in a positive upward direction. All right, so when you go into the trajectory, it's not hard, it's easy, it's conversational. And that's the part I love about this. You're having conversations with the people in your loved one's life and your loved one themselves at every age and stage about, okay, what do you want to achieve at this stage? What do you want to achieve at the next stage? What happened in the last stage that wasn't so good that we might want to avoid next time? And so they've broken it down into every life stage that there is. They start with early childhood and infancy. They go to school age, transitional, once you've left school, adulthood, and elderly. So you can go into each one of those. And they have guided conversation. Since I think most people on here have transition aged or adult aged children, I'm going to look at this one. And you will download the conversational guide. It's easy to do. It's not going to happen, is it? All right. Well, y'all can do that on your own. But they'll ask you, there's probably about, I would say 10 to 15 questions that help you understand what to ask, what to look for, and have those, what I would consider difficult conversations. It's just a guide. If you want to add or take away to that guide, you absolutely can. But it's important to do ahead of the next stage so that you can always be planning for the next stage of their life. All right, and then I'm going back. Well, I can do it that way. Going back to the framework, the next tool, and I'm going to have to X out of here, aren't I? How can I close this little sidebar, Alex?
That I'm not sure.
So I can go to see that other. Yeah, that'll work. Thank you. I'm using Alex's computer tonight, so y'all bear with me.
Different rate.
All right. We there yet? Okay. Achieving life outcomes. This is the next tool. So you're gonna, what happened? I don't know where it went.
Give it a second.
Exploring life stages. We just did that. I'll be patient with me. So we're gonna go to achieving life outcomes. That's the next tool that you're gonna want to do after you've done the trajectory. And I love this one. This one is all about the framework and how you're going to be able to understand why the person in the context of the family is important. Please go. There we go. All right, achieving life outcomes. Individuals and families plan for the present and the future life outcomes that take into account all facets of life and have opportunities for life experiences and build self-determination, social capital, economic sufficiency, and community inclusion. And that's where that building natural supports is going to come in at the end. So when you're thinking about planning for the future and having a good life, what they do is they break throughout every life stage, they break all of these domains down into ways we get support, okay? So if you think about all the different ways your loved one with a disability or yourself may need support, it's going to fall into one of these life domains, one of these areas of your life. Daily life and employment, community living, healthy living, safety and security, social and spiritual, or advocacy and engagement. All right. So those domains have these icons, and those icons are important because they're used throughout the tools. Whether they name them or not, you can just look at that icon and recognize, oh, the picture that has the little calendar with the sunshine on it, that's my daily life and my employment. The brown circle with the house, that's my community living. So they're all labeled that way, and you'll get to be real familiar with those icons, and they won't even have to name that domain. You'll just know what it is by looking at that icon, because all of these tools are color-coded that way. So can y'all see the little arrow or the hand over here with the circle? This is the part that I love about these tools. It's simple, easy peasy. The blue circle in the middle, that is the person in the context of the family. These out here are the different life domains. These three rings, you've got a little orange ring, you've got a little turquoise ring, you've got a bright neon green ring around that. Those are the three buckets. And then the 5 rings on the outside represent, those colors represent the 5 points of the star. And we'll talk about all those in the upcoming tools. But when you're looking at or thinking about, after you've done the trajectory and everything else we just covered, the ways that your loved one will need support, you've got to make sure you've got all these different domains covered, because at one time or another in every life stage, they're going to probably need support in one of these domains or more. So one way to think about this is naming people that you can think of that would be a natural fit or a natural support to help them in these ways, because maybe those people have some kind of special knowledge background or experience with those different domains. All right. So for example, when we were thinking about a natural support for my son, Colby, I had to think about his healthy living domain. Who do I know that could be a good natural support for Colby, because they've got a very valuable knowledge background in health and medical issues? That was our friend Heidi. She's now on his supported decision-making team as his healthy living support, but she has known Colby since he was 2 years old. When Colby started having seizures, Heidi would come to me and try to explain what the doctors were trying to explain, but as I'm reading their notes, I could barely understand half of what they were talking about. So I would bring those notes to Heidi and go, what does this mean? What do we do now? And Heidi was very supportive, not just to me as another mom, but as somebody in the medical field who worked in an emergency room type situation and saw seizures all the time. So for her, it was nothing. It was no big deal. It was just natural for her to come in and explain, this is what that means. This is what you're going to want to do. This is what to look out for. And she, because she went to the same, her kids went to the same preschool as mine, and we went to the same church together, it was just normal that we would have that close proximity with each other and be talking to each other on a weekly basis. And of course, the topic of Colby and would come up. And so we just stayed friends, and it was natural for us to build that relationship through the years. And very, very, very relieving when we got to this age and stage of Colby transitioning into adulthood and independence, to know that he's got somebody who wants to be invested in his life this way, has this special background of knowledge, and is willing to support him when medical issues pop up. So that's a way to look at these life domains, but you're always just going to want to make sure that you're touching on each one of those, because they're all very, very important. And some of them, like safety and security, that's just always going to be an issue. Our loved ones with disabilities are more vulnerable than other people. So safety and security is just going to always be a priority, right? Okay. Life course framework, the next tool. Outside of those achieving life outcomes and setting them up for the domains, you're going to want to look at the supporting of the 3 buckets. Those 3 buckets. All right, did y'all see there how the different colors are right there? You got the blue, the orange, and the green. Discovery and navigation, connecting and networking, and goods and services. So when you think about it, you're constantly going to one of those 3 buckets throughout the course of your loved one's disability or their lifetime, pulling from one of those 3 buckets, and maybe pulling from 2 or all 3 at the same time. But you're always going to be learning new information and trying to help them navigate their life that way. You're always going to be trying to connect and network with other people at every age and every stage. And you'll probably on the day-to-day basis be always looking for those tangible, what I call the stuff, always be looking for the things that provide those supports and those services, whether it's from public or private organizations or your community or wherever the church, whatever place you can find the stuff, the things that provide that tangible service, that's a bucket in and of itself. All right, so when you're trying to make sure that you've touched on each of those buckets, just kind of think about when I'm doing this activity, is this a discovery and navigation kind of activity like the webinar you're participating on tonight? That's both discovery and navigation because you're learning about these tools, but because you are all on here together connecting and networking, and you're all going to get the same guide, you can actually dig into this bucket a little bit too. Goods and services would come from the actual provider or that eligibility specific location. So try not to leave any of the buckets out when you're thinking about how to support your loved ones, and make sure that you kind of try to keep a good balance between the 3. Because if you rely too heavily on goods and services without the connecting and the networking or the discovery navigation, it's easy to get stuck. It's easy to get stuck in a place without doing all 3. Multitasking, right? That's what we're experts at anyway. So, all right. And then the second to last tool in the life course tools, once you get done with that, is the support star, the integrated services and supports across the life course itself. So individuals and families access an array of integrated supports to achieve their envisioned good life. These include those that are publicly or privately funded and based upon eligibility, community supports that are available to anyone, relational-based supports, technology supports, and personal strengths and assets of the individual and their family. So when you think about the star, just hold up your hand and think about the 5 fingers on your hand. And if you ever forget which one of those that you're working on is, just name a finger. That's what I'll tell everybody to do, is assign a finger to one of the points of the star, memorize it that way. So you can just always kind of have it in the back of your mind. But if you can see right here, the star in the middle, you've got, I'm going to start it over here on community-based, down here at the bottom. It's that color, I would call it kind of like a periwinkle blue color, community-based supports. That's a support that's going to be valuable and important to them both now and for the rest of their lives. So you're going to be thinking of places such as businesses, parks, schools, faith-based communities, a church, healthcare facilities, groups or memberships, organizations, local services, and public resources, something that everybody uses. Those community-based supports will be very important. And then you're going to think about another way to support your loved one would be through technology. That's that bright pink point of the star. Personal technology, something that anybody can use, assistive or adaptive technology, environmental technology. I know my son Colby is very reliant on his cell phone. When he was younger and he was developing speech and going to speech therapy, he had an augmentative communication device. Sometimes your technology can be something as simple as a sound machine to help with those sensory deprivation moments, or whatever technology is going to be valuable to support that person. It's important. And I can tell you with remote supports growing as they are, it's going to become even more important in the future. So always be thinking about the technology in that environment that can help support your loved one when you're thinking about their support needs. Personal strengths and assets. This is something that is incredibly important because of that social capital piece. It helps us remember that there's always going to be something your loved one with a disability can contribute. There's always going to be something that they bring to the table through their personal strengths and their assets. So you're going to want to make sure you list and you name and you identify their skills, their personal abilities, their knowledge, their experiences in life, their strengths, the things that they're good at, and things that other people admire about them, their assets, even their own personal belongings and their own resources. Those are their strengths and their assets. Those are their contributions. Those are things that they bring to the table. And it's going to be very important for their support needs going forward. So it's important to recognize them as such. Another very valuable support is their relationships. All right. So whether it's friends, families, work associates, or acquaintances, don't count those out. Always include personal relationships in those different areas as one of their support needs and something they have or something they need more of. And last, not necessarily least, but definitely last, because you don't want to start there. You want to start on the community base or somewhere else. Go to eligibility specific, because what we don't want to happen is if you go to eligibility specific first, we don't want you to get stuck there and assume that those providers or those services are going to support all of these other points on the star. We want to think about all of those other points first and then go to the eligibility specific so that we've got everything covered. All right, so those are their needs-based services. That's going to be based on their age, where they live, different income levels, their employment status, government paid services. Those are all things that they're eligible for based on those different criteria. All right, so I'm going to give you a tip. You can see the little worksheets you can print out and do on your own down here. But when you're doing these and you're thinking about it and you're labeling these supports or these assets, draw a line in the middle of each of those points and put on the top, these are the things they have. These are the supports they have in this area. And then on the bottom, put need, N-E-E-D, need, things that they don't have yet, but they need to include in that category of supports. All right, so that is the integrated support star. Why do we call it the integrated support star? This is the fun part. I'm going to go back here. And we're gonna go over to, y'all hang with me. We're gonna go over to, where'd it go? Foundational tools, person-centered. All right, y'all saw how I went to foundational tools, person-centered, right? This part of that support star, where'd it go? That's the mapping portfolio. Well, okay, there it is. I'm gonna ask you to watch this quick video and then we'll be about finished.
We're going to learn all about integrated supports and STAR.
Can they hear it?
This is the integrated support STAR. Integrated STAR represents getting support we need to have a good life.
Whoops.
Remember in module 1, we talked about our vision and their families having good lives. A good life is being part of our families and communities with supports we need when and where we need them. Now we're going to learn about each part of the STAR. Our STAR top, our personal strengths and assets. These are the things that we know and can do that help.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it. Okay. All right, can everybody see down at the bottom of the circle next to the star? You've got the person, and then the purple circle on top of that is the family, and then the blue circle on top of that is the community. The support star that's inside each of those circles is there for good reason. Before, back in the day, I want to say 20, 30 years ago, you would have seen a bright, you remember this eligibility specific point on the star that was green? You would have seen a bright green circle wrapped around that person right there on that circle diagram. Often, maybe unintentionally, that bright green ring of eligibility support services created a divide between the person and the family. And it kind of cut the person off from their family. And that created communication issues, support issues, and different things that were not necessarily good. I don't think that that was something that was intentional. I think that everybody had their idea of what was best for that person, but as a result of disconnecting the person from the family, that was just something that happened throughout time or over the course of time. And so what we wanted to do was remove that barrier and put eligibility services into part of all these other ways to support someone, not just eligibility specific services alone. Does that make sense? And so when you take that support star and you've got each one of those 5 points of the star, so each one of those support needs being met, then they not only help the person themselves, but they help the family as well as the community as far as contributions go and as far as longevity goes. There's actually research showing longer lifespans doing things this way. But it helps us understand all of the different ways we can support someone outside of eligibility specific services, which kind of goes back to that all triangle. Okay. All right. Last but not least, I'm going to just do the basics. Going back to that last tool, I want to click. There it goes. I hope that described the support star well for you. All right. Last but not least, once you've gotten to that part, you're going to always want to remember the value of transformational policy and systems change. Why is that? That's your advocacy piece, right? That's your engaging in the community advocacy piece for organizational training and assistance. What's important there is always remembering the stakeholders involved, organizational practices, organizational policy and procedure, and whether or not system transformation is needed. one important thing that they talk about when you dig deeper into this is the difference between system transition and system transformation. And I want you to remember that because it's going to be important as you're using the tools, thinking about, is this a transitional change? Is this life stage going, transitioning from one place to another, or is this a transformational change? So the transitional change would be, for example, Alabama recently did this. They renamed support coordinators, used to be called case managers, right? They renamed the support coordinators, revised some of their job description and their role in that place. And so they're no longer called case managers, they're called support coordinators. That's a transitional change of that system. A transformational change would be something that affects the culture and the mindset or the perspective of how you go about supporting someone. A transformational change would be, when we talked about the history of perspectives, moving out of the institutionalized mindset where there's a problem we got to fix and this is how we're going to fix it, to the era of self-determination where we don't see it as a problem, we see it as an asset or something that is unique that requires different kinds of supports. So does that make sense to everybody? That's the difference between transformational change versus transitional change. That's important to think about when you're thinking about the ways that you can advocate. All right. That is the Life Course Tools Basic 101. I hope that you will go to this website and find all of the different pieces and nuggets of gold that they have, and just spend an hour trying to write down. You can print it out or you can do it online, but write down names, write down words, write down goals, write down support needs. Do each one of these tools. And if you do this for an hour every week, within 6 weeks, you'll have accomplished more planning in the shorter amount of time than you will have ever imagined. And there's something about that helps you think about what you're thinking about in the moment, in the everyday moments, when there's a decision to be made. Because when you can name something that you don't want to happen when you're doing the trajectory, and then that happens or something like that happens, you'll be able to identify it immediately. Go, I remember I wrote down, we didn't want this thing to happen. We didn't want to drink a lot of Cokes because that would cause kidney stones. I see there's another Coke in your hand, and it'll help you visualize things and meet the need in the moment. The opposite is true for the positive things that happen. So I encourage you to go through these Life Course tools on your own. Do them with yourself first. Go planning with yourself so that you're a lot more familiar with it and able to use the right words and recognize the right patterns of engagement when you do it with your loved one. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. If anybody has any questions about any of this, and hopefully I'm going to stop share. Hopefully I made that all about as clear as I could and as easy as I could, but I can promise you there's so much more if you want to dig in and get more involved. Everybody that participated, I've got the names. I'm going to send you a guide. It's a 12-page guide to how to build natural supports within your own community, just for participating. And if you have questions on that, feel free to email or ask. So I think we're good.
There's just one thing in the chat if you want to.
Contingency planning. Good job, Alex. Great work. And Karen says, I'm very excited to learn more because I'm in the process of moving back to Alabama and I will live in the Birmingham area come October. I'll be preparing to put my team together in Birmingham. Your supported decision-making team, I'm assuming, is what you're talking about, Karen? Yes. I know Karen. I know that's what she's doing. 2 new messages. All right, good deal. Thank you, everyone. If there are not any more questions, I'm going to wrap it up. I do want to remind everybody, the next, or part 3, the next one will be February 15th. That's another Thursday at 6 p.m. And then March 21st will be our last one, part 4, also Thursday at 6 p.m. So invite your friends, tell everybody join us. These are not consecutive. You don't have to have done parts 1 and 2 before you can do part 3. You can join in at any time. But together, all 4 of them help kind of pave the way for a much more self-determined life. And I hope that's what you got out of this. So thank you for joining, and I will hopefully speak to you soon or see you by February 15th. Y'all take care. Have a good evening.